Making projects for beginners with 2x4s. Yes, a 2x4. It's inexpensive. You can find it almost any home improvement store. And guess what? If you mess up or you really mess up, it doesn't cost you much. You can fix it and try again. This is the second video in this series, so if you might be thinking, hey, 2x4s, those projects will look ugly. Actually, you might be quite surprised. And they're really easy to do. So I'll put a link to the first video in the description. Make sure you check it out. Otherwise, let's go make some projects. Just like the first video, I'm going to use a miter saw to make all of these cuts. Now, if by chance you don't have one of these, you can get away with a circular saw most of the time, if you're very careful. Just please be very careful. For our first project, we have 4 boards at 14 inches, 1 board at 10 inches, and 2 boards at 4 1/4 inches. Our next step is to take our 10-inch board and our 4 1/4 inch boards, and we want to attach them together. We want these little short boards to be directly across from each other and also centered on this board so it'll be nice and perpendicular. And there's no real easy way to attach them across like that without using pocket screws. You could also glue them, but this will be much faster. The next step would be to attach our cross to our legs, but I have an idea. Just attaching it like this, the top of these, well, it's just going to be a little too blunt. So I think what I'm going to do is cut a 45-degree angle on the top of each of these legs and it'll look a lot better. So let's do that. Then we want to take our legs and our cross and we want to come up about 3.5 inches and then center our cross right in the center of each of these boards. To keep this all from moving, I clamped it in position and then I carefully flipped it upside down. This will allow me to get to the outside so I can put some screws in. I'm also going to pre-drill these holes just to make sure it doesn't crack the wood. With the first one in position, any clue what I'm doing yet? Let's keep going. Once the first 2 legs are in position, it makes it a lot easier to install the rest of them. You don't have to be an exact going up and down because once you put it in place, it'll automatically find that right position. I still recommend pre-drilling the holes. And now this is fully assembled. Any clue on what it could be yet? When I first saw something similar to this, to me it kind of looked like the legs of a table. And then after looking at it for a little bit, I went, wait, this isn't a table. This is actually for a potted plant. It's a great little display, a little holder that gets it up off the ground. The great thing about this though, if you take this and you stain it, primarily a dark color just in case it gets a little wet from your plant, it'll look really, really good sitting over in a corner. Imagine nice leafy green plant sitting in this, and that'll look really cool. Here's a little tip for the beginners. If you're working with lumber a lot, I'd suggest picking up one of these. This is called a speed square. It allows you to do quick measurements and quick angles with just a quick turn of your tool. Now this is a standard size and they also make a much larger size. 9 out of 10 times I grab the smaller one, so if you can only buy one, I definitely suggest just the standard size. Now some of these, the numbers on them come in real clear and others, well, not so much. I definitely suggest picking up the ones where you can see the numbers a lot clearer, but if you can only find the other one, it'll work for you too. These also come in a plastic. I personally prefer metal. It just has a little weight to it and it feels a little more substantial. Overall, pick one of these up. Moving on to project number 2. This particular one is going to require an angle on the end of each of our boards. But don't worry, it's still a simple project, so let's get started. Before I make any cuts, I need to adjust my miter saw. I need to adjust this to 22.5 degrees. That might seem a little odd, but just think, it's half of 45. And so it's an actual common cut for a lot of miter saws. So if you adjust it, a lot of times there's actually a locking spot already there at 22.5, making this a relatively easy find. I then position my board here to cut off the end of it. I want this first angle to be right on the end so we can minimize waste through the rest of our cuts. Now we want our second cut to be opposing the first, so I need to adjust the miter saw and swing it over to the 22.5 on this side. Right there. And we want the length of this board from long end to long end to be right at 10 inches. So right there. With the first one complete, I need a second board that looks identical with the same angle cuts, but it needs to be 16 inches long. Once we get that 16-inch board cut, we can set it to the side, and we next need to cut out 4 boards at 10 inches long. Now, notice that these were all cut in kind of an opposing direction, where these are all parallel. So you make sure you get that right. Opposing and parallel, otherwise this won't work right. For our next two cuts, we're actually going to have different angles on each end. In other words, this side is going to be 22.5 and this side is going to be 45. We also need to make sure that our cuts are opposing each other. Now that we have the first one cut and it's 22.5 on this side and 45 on this one, that means this side's already 45 and we need to change it back to 22.5 for this side. Oh, and this needs to be 10 inches long. With these two final pieces cut, we are ready for assembly. With one exception, if you have any big black writing marks on your wood, it's a good idea to sand them off now, otherwise it could be a little bit difficult to get to them later. Let's do a quick little test fit to make sure this is going to work. We're going to put the 10-inch board and then a 16. Then we're going to take two of these 10-inch that have the parallel sides and put them about there. Then take the other two with the parallel sides. You want to overlap them about 1.5 inches, give or take. Then take the last two boards, and these have the 45 degrees on the ends, and you want to kind of line them up on one side and slide them over, and there we go. We got a cool little Christmas tree. Now you can glue all this together, but I have a feeling it might be a little bit hard to do and require a bunch of clamps, or you can just use some screws going in from the bottom and the sides to hold it together. It's also a good idea to pre-drill each of these holes since they're so close to the end. When it comes to the top pieces, I would attach these two together first so you know this angle is nice and flush, and then you can attach it in position, and it should be pretty easy to do that. And there's a cool little Christmas tree that you can make really easily, and it looks fancy with all the angles. Plus, you only used one board. Oh, and just in case you were wondering, let's see how tall this is. It is just under 29 inches. So, I hope you get a chance to make one. Moving on to number 3, let's keep with the angled cuts. But I want to make something that looks, well, almost twisted. Our first cut will actually be on the end. We want to clean this up, remove this paint, and so we just want to remove 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch. I then measured out 12 inches and I want to cut a 45-degree angle. And to do that, I just laid my speed square exactly at the 12-inch mark and made a line so I have an easy line to follow when I need to make my cut. Now, I just need to adjust my miter saw. Then we're going to take the board and flip it over, measure out another 12 inches and make a line across that to make that cut. We then need to flip the wood up on edge, making sure that the longest side will be on the top. I then measured out 12 inches, made a mark, and used the speed square to make another 45-degree angle. Here are the first 3 pieces. Any guesses yet? We then want to take the board and flip it back down flat, making sure that the longest edge, the sharp edge, is on the top. If you don't do that, it can mess up this project, so make sure that is on the top. Measuring out 22 inches, I made a mark and then used a speed square to again make that 45-degree line. For the next cut, I bet you can guess what we're about to do. Yep, we're gonna flip it on edge once again. Then we're gonna measure out 12 inches and we're gonna make a mark with our speed square. Notice the angle here, so I'm gonna have to change my miter saw, but we're gonna do 12 inches and make that cut. For this next cut, nope, we're not gonna flip it. We're actually gonna keep it right as is. We're gonna take the miter saw and we're gonna rotate it to the other side of 45 degrees and cut one at 12 inches again. And for our final cut, we've rotated the miter saw so it's right at 90 degrees, your standard cut. And from the long edge here, we're gonna measure out 12 inches and make that cut. And as before, if you have any writing on your boards and you need to sand it, this is the time to do it. Now set these up temporarily so you kind of get an idea what it looks like. This is gonna be the top, this is gonna be the bottom, and this will be the leg that connects the two. To attach all these pieces together, you could use a variety of ways. Glue, screws, dowels, and a few others. But I'm just going to use screws to attach this together quickly so you can see the finished product. Then you can decide later exactly how you want to assemble it. And here is the final result. It's a cool little table. It has like a little U shape to the top. You could put glass over it, maybe like a clear polycarbonate or something along those lines. To hold it together, I put pocket screws in the top and just regular screws right here on the ends for the bottom of it. Most of this will be hidden under the couch anyway. Oh, by the way, I didn't tell you, this is a couch table. Great for in your living room or anything along those lines. Now, this side will slide in, hence the little area for the couch. So this will be the side that faces out and it looks really nice. So please let me know your thoughts about it in the comments. I'd really love to hear about it. And there we have it. 3 more great projects that you can build with just a basic 2x4. In fact, each one of these only took 1 2x4, so they'll be very inexpensively to build. Hey, and if you mess up, it didn't cost you much. Get out there and get some more practice in. Now, if by chance you have any questions, or maybe you thought of something I forgot to mention in this video, please add those to the comments below. You're gonna help out a bunch of other people, and maybe I can answer your questions and help you out. So, I hope you get a chance to get out in your shop and have fun building.